in the depths of an ancient tomb, where the air hangs thick with the dust of ages past, a chilling discovery was made. Two skeletons, their bony fingers still intertwined in an eternal embrace, a silent testament to a love that transcended the boundaries of life itself. Who were these ill-fated souls, and what forbidden passion had bound them together in death's unyielding grip? From the shadowy recesses of the past, their story echoes through the centuries, a haunting tale of desire, defiance, and the unfathomable forces that govern our mortal existence. Brace yourselves, dear listeners, for the tragic saga of the star-crossed lovers of Valdaro is one that will chill your very marrow. It is a narrative woven from the threads of love and loss, where the lines between reality and the supernatural blur, and the ultimate price for devotion is paid in full. Venture into the realm of the unknown, where the veil between worlds grows perilously thin, and the whispers of the damned beckon you ever deeper into the abyss. For in the end, as you bear witness to the lover's plight, you may find yourself questioning the very nature of the world you thought you knew. Are you prepared to confront the darkness that lurks within the heart of humanity? To gaze upon the face of eternal devotion, even as it drags you screaming into the terrifying depths of the great beyond? Then steel your resolve, for the star-crossed lovers of Valdaro await, their bony fingers poised to ensnare you in their chilling grip. The earth groaned and sifted as the excavators broke through the final layer of sediment, their tools scraping against something solid, something that should not be there. Dr. Elena Rossi held her breath, daring to hope that after decades of fruitless searching, they had finally uncovered a remnant of the lost civilization. As the dust settled, a collective gasp escaped the team. There, nestled in the tomb's confines, lay two skeletons. But these were no ordinary remains. No, what they had discovered would shake the archaeological world to its core. The skeletons were frozen in a grotesque embrace, their fleshless arms entwined, their bony fingers interlinked, as if death itself had been stayed by the power of their passion. Elena's skin prickled with revulsion, and something else, a formless dread, that wormed its way into her mind. Who were these doomed souls? What saga of darkness and anguish had led them to this final, eternal coupling? As her eyes raked over the grinning skulls, it was almost as if they were silently beckoning her, daring her to unravel the grisly truth. But some truths are better left unspoken. Some doors are meant to remain sealed, lest the horrors within escape to inevitably plague the waking world. Yet the mystery gnawed at Elena relentlessly. There was an energy pervading that unhallowed space, an ethereal malice that slithered unseen throughout the shadows, a malevolence that even now slid its icy tendrils around her mind, seizing her thoughts and propelling her forward despite all warnings. She had to know, had to gaze into the abyss, and wrest the secrets from its core, no matter what eldritch price she may have to pay. For the star-crossed lovers of Valdaro had finally been discovered, and their story would be told. the village of Valdaro lay nestled in the Emerald Valley, a mere speck amid the towering crags and primordial forests of the Apennine Mountains. To the casual observer, it was a pristine, isolated sanctuary, seemingly untouched by the passage of ages. But those few who called this forsaken hamlet home knew better than to trust its tranquil facade. Dread and suspicion hung in the crisp mountain air like a miasma, a legacy born from unspeakable atrocities committed long ago, when the old waste still held sway. Though centuries may fade, true evil leaves a stain that can never be washed away. It was here, in this realm where pagan rites and foul sorceries still lurked in the shadows, that 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤 were born, two bright stars in the dismal firmament of Valdaro, their joined destinies heralding a conflagration that would reduce the ancient traditions to smoldering ash. 𝘿𝙤𝙤 was the jewel of the village, her raven tresses and azure eyes instantly marking her as favored by the gods, or perhaps cursed by them, depending on who you asked. She moved with an ethereal grace that defied her earthly form. By contrast, 𝘿𝙤𝙤 was a poor shepherd's son, lean and bronzed by years of tending his flock among the precipitous peaks. Yet, there was an intensity that burned in his emerald stare, as though his very soul had been forged in the searing crucible of the mountains themselves. From the moment their paths first intertwined, an unspoken force wove their fates into an unbreakable cord. Though they hailed from disparate worlds, she the blessed daughter of the village elder, he a lowly orphan worker of the fields, there was simply no denying the primal magnetism that drew them together. But in Valdaro, such ardor between two souls could never be suffered to blossom unfettered. No, malign influences were afoot, eldritch energies that had slithered through the centuries, poisoning the very air. And as 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤's passions ignited, their connection would awaken an ancient evil that should never have been disturbed. An evil that, once roused, would stop at nothing to extinguish the searing flame of their love, and reduce their world to a charnel pit of ash. From that first, fateful crossing of their paths, a ravenous hunger took root within 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤, an all-consuming craving that gnawed at their very essences. Try as they might to resist its maddening lure, the real carnal ache proved overwhelming. They came together in whispers and shadows, their trysts unfolding beneath the pale moon's judging gaze. Each frantic caress, every gasping profession of undying devotion, stoked the insatiable flames blazing between them. But this was no paradise born of idyllic infatuation. No, their passion held a feverish intensity, as if they teetered on the edge of damnation with each embrace. For in the superstitious pagan culture of Valdaro, their union was the ultimate blasphemy, an unholy desecration that profaned the ancient laws and rituals. The village's elders caught whispers of the lover's betrayal, and their wrinkled faces contorted within bridled wrath. How dare these insolent younglings threaten to unravel the intricate tapestry of traditions that had bound Valdaro for countless generations? Céline's own father, the wizened elder Bartholo, took especial offense to his daughter's fixation on the low-born shepherd. In his milky, ruined eyes, 𝘿𝙤𝙤 was a wretched preacher unworthy of even the scrapings from Valdaro's gitters. His bristling contempt and caustic tongue made that disgust exquisitely plain. But no draconian tongue lashings could sever the amorous knot binding the ill-fated pair. If anything, each blistering condemnation and veiled threat only emboldened them to surrender more fervently to their illicit ardor's smoldering call. Yet, with each hushed concatenation, every secret rendezvous beneath illuming forest canopies, an insidious force began awakening in the shadowed hollows, a primordial malevolence, ancient and inscrutable, that had slumbered since before Valdaro's founding. As the lovers' passions escalated, so too did the ominous rumblings from the dank spaces between realities, a ravenous evil so fathomless, so eternal in its virulence, that even the elders who upheld the old ways dared not give it utterance. For Céline and 𝘿𝙤𝙤's unbridled desire had awoken an unspeakable horror, and its soulless hunger may spell damnation for all it touches. As the forbidding couple's liaisons persisted in defiance of Valdaro's taboos, a miasma of dread and hostility descended over the village. The stifling pall seemed to leach all vibrancy from the once vibrant hamlet, until even the rickety timber homes took on a funereal gray past. 𝘿𝙤𝙤 moved among the narrow, mud-packed streets as a wraith, his furtive gaze constantly tracked by baleful eyes that shone with thinly veiled malice. The lowly shepherd found no solace nor security, even among his own kind, for to consort with one as rarefied as the elder's daughter was to court ruination itself. When the hateful blares and vitriolic curses evolved into pelted rocks and broken bones, 𝘿𝙤𝙤 could no longer blind himself to the inescapable truth. He and Céline were reviled, unwanted scabs on the pristine village flesh. Their very existence was an affront to Valdaro's ancient tenets that could not be endured. Yet Céline's own tormented road proved no less harrowing. Once celebrated as the blessed jewel of her plan, she now weathered endless castigation from each withered elder, and their spittle-flecked rants. No slight nor vile insult was spared, as they condemned her wanton defiling of their ancestral ways with her unseemly infatuation. But no mortal tongue could hope to extinguish the raging inferno of desire that licked at the lovers' souls. If anything, The escalating torment only stoked their passions into an conflagration of furious rebellion. Let the provincials have their desiccated traditions and rituals. 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤 had tasted the succulent, carnal rapture of true rapture, and they would not be deterred from sating their endless hunger. So they carried on in brazen contempt, as their trests grew increasingly feverish and unrestrained. Arched backs sent wind amid the tangled brambles, fistfuls of loam grasped, and lips bruised in unslakable thirst. Every venereal act was a ferocious refutation, a sensual, profane benediction that scorned the villagers' scorn. Yet they were not alone in their transgressions. No, a primordial malefic consciousness slithered through the loamy soil and twisted branches, savoring the billowing waves of ecstatic delirium as its own obscene feast. The more the others surrendered, the more they unleashed and bridled torrents of rapturous euphoria into the fetid shadows, unwittingly offering up sacrificial ecstasies to an unspeakable evil that had lurked in Valdaro since its primal founding. And as their ravenous unions reached dizzying new obscenities, that which slithered through the umbral woodlands was finally roused from its eons spanning slumber, and its eternal, insatiable voracity hungered once more. 𝘿𝙤𝙤's breath hung in ragged plumes as she tore through the glacial forest, the skeletal branches weeping at her ashen face. Her feet found little purchase on a carpeting of chitinous leaves and decaying loam. Behind her, a cacophony of perverse shrieks and howls reverberated through the twilit tree trunks. Mocking calls dredged up from some eldritch hollows of the primordial earth itself. The ungodly shrill rattled your very bones, lancing into your mind like jagged obsidian shards. 𝘿𝙤𝙤. She had to reach 𝘿𝙤𝙤 before the inexplicable, sanity-blasting forces pursuing her enacted their unimaginable maleficence upon his flesh. If she failed, an icy dread gripped her at the thought. No, she would not, could not permit her mind to follow that path into the endless void. Her flight had begun with a somnambulic foray into the lightless, tangled woods, a moonlit ritual, one of many she and her beloved shepherd had enacted amid their frenzied couplings over the moons. But this one was different. From the first torrid caresses and whispered incantations, an unnatural chill had snaked through 𝘿𝙤𝙤's veins, a cold so profound, so antithetical to the searing furnace of their desires. It leached all warmth from their undying ardor, and in that frozen vacuum, something decidedly unholy had taken root. She could still envision the scene crystallizing into pure, bone-cracking terror once 𝘿𝙤𝙤 succumbed to the waking trance. His eyes had gone utterly, disturbingly blank. All semblance of her impassioned love surrendered to whatever goaded him to violence. His powerful hands, calloused from years, shepherding his flock over the craggy peaks, had closed around her slender throat with merciless force. And as the dim twilight seeped from her world, she could discern a gargantuan, festering presence lurching in from the periphery. A miasm of black rot and ichor, belching forth eldritch geometries that sheared through her fragile psyche like calving glaciers. In that moment, death's oblivion seemed a profound mercy in comparison to what hungered from the outer blacknesses. So she had fled, with every ragged inhalation stoking her desperation to find Iolo, to somehow wrest him from the encroaching madness before it fully consumed them both. Her exertion proved futile. An eerie, impenetrable fog billowed through the scabrous trees, shrouding the woodlands in a spectral bloom that seemed to extinguish any hope of salvation. All around her, the perverse howling reached a crescendo of malefic exaltation. Then ahead, through the gloric murk, a familiar silhouette lurched into view. At its core burned two dying embers, the remnants of Iolo's adoring gaze, now twisted into a mask of utter, soul-shriveling revulsion. Yet it was the presence slithering behind him, a grotesque tangle of riven anatomies and foul iconographies witnessed only in her darkest fevered nightmares, that stole what little breath remained in Céline's constricted lungs. In that endless, damning moment of revelation, she knew what profane truth they had wakened and bitterly birthed into this realm through their unforgivable hubris. And as Iolo's rectus parted in a scream that contained the accumulated anguish of existence itself, Céline accepted the singular, wretched choice that remained to them. For the unspeakable, eternal horror they had unleashed upon Valdaro through their blasphemous love could only be severed at its mortal wellspring, which meant one of them must sever the other. The demon birthed fop coiled around Céline in obscene tendrils, as her breath tightened around the jagged obsidian shard. Iolo's rapturous howls reverberated through the murk, laced with escalating hysteria, as the eldritch presence slithered forth from the primordial tree line. This subhuman anomaly birthed from their unforgivable raptures defied all definition, all semblance of the natural world, as Céline's indoctrinated mind could perceive it. Its fetid, lumpen mass pulsed with arrhythmic convulsions as disjunct anatomies knitted and then parted in grotesque cycles. That not even those ineffable horrors affronted her sanity as profoundly as the pitiable, warped essence still dimly burning at the abomination's profane core. The last smoldering embers of the man she loved, his very being now and to an eternal, unspeakable torment, as this lurching, unholy thing's animating spark. This was her doing. This perverse, soul-withering subjugation of the brightest light in her life, was the unforgivable sacrilege she had wrought through her ravenous indulgence in the sins of the flesh. The elder's scornful condemnations and dire warnings she had arrogantly disregarded now lacerated your consciousness with undeniable truth. All her choices, her impassioned defiance of Valdaro's ancestral taboos, had birthed this. An arctic wave of revulsion threatened to rob Cellini of all cognizance. But in the malign, Stygian miasma pervading the woodland groves, a single point of luminescence remained, a pinprick beacon piercing the profane desolation surrounding her. It called to her, begging for the succor only she could provide, the one final sacrifice that may let attain some spark of redemption for her egregious transgressions. Cellini answered that silent pleas, propelling herself into the seething, preternatural fog, her delicate features twisted into a rictus mask of anguished determination, closing the distance in an endless series of lurching strides. She found the once beatific visage of her beloved reduced to a riven, half-formed crevice amid the flowing, lumpen grotesqueries, and within that ruined orifice, the flickering remnants of Iolo's adoring green eyes met her tortured gaze in wordless communion, silently confirming the only balm to his eternal torment. His whimpers mingled with the perverse exaltations echoing all around them. Cellini steeled her resolve, drawing the jagged obsidian towards the sickly, pustulant orifice. But as she angled the razor edge, a chorus of ecstatic howls erupted from the fetid abomination itself. Rapturous, keening bellows that lanced like arctic tendrils into her skull. It knew this eternal, transcendent evil they had birthed through their actions, knew precisely what merciful escape she intended for her unbearable beloved, and it would not be suffered. Within the erratic, jarring convulsions of its malign mass, Cellini discerned a perverse counter-resolve taking form, an eldritch willingness to inflict any depravity, any anguish upon Iolo's lingering soul, to thwart her exculpatory intent. Reality itself blurred and warped around them. A sliver of mortality's grace remained to them. Cellini realized with dawning clarity that the price would be her own damnation, an existence of eternal torment and profanity suffered for the sake of leasing Iolo's single spark of existence from the fathomless misery of its parasitic subjugation. So, as the demonic shrieks reached, and in that moment of mortal surrender, the obsidian shard found its mark, piercing into the remnants of her beloved's emerald stare. Their essences merged in an epiphany of shared torment and unfathomable release, even as the abomination of their damning love endeavored to engulf her bodily in its interminable vastness. But in the end, the siren call of oblivion proved stronger than any profane bondage the outer darkness could enact. Thus they passed into realms beyond this veil, in unified, inevitable embrace. The cataclysmic ramifications of their joint transgressions echoing across infinity, even as their mortal shells calcified into eternal, damning witness to the inseparable depths of their doomed love. The passage of millennia proved a mere blink across the unwavering stare of the skull's empty sockets, even as Valdaro itself withered from the world's recollections like a fable borne away on the mountain winds. Their osseous remains endured. They lingered, an indelible cipher seared into the very strata, their fleshless arms locked in eternal, damning embrace, an unbroken silent witness to the cosmic depravities suffered when the petty, finite lusts of mortal creatures dare to defy the ancient, immutable boundaries. For in their rapturous thralls, in their flagrant blasphemy against the old ways and sacred traditions anchoring the human world, 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤 had birthed an unspeakable monstrosity, a transcendent abomination born of the spaces between dimensions, where only the most unutterable cosmic horrors are meant to tread. And in its pitiless, eternal voracity, for fresh anguish with which to slake its fathomless, eldritch hunters, the demonic presence sundered not just the very threads of their ill-fated existences, but the fabric of all reality was rent asunder. So the skeletal duo remained amid the indifferent loam and Shalians, their damning truth encrypted into the very ley lines encircling the primordial planet itself, a stark memorandum of the profane, soul-lacerating devastation that results when a folly of mortal ardor transcends its cosmically appointed boundaries. Yet perhaps there lies a glimmer of eternal purity even in their damnation. For was their ultimate, cataclysmic sacrifice not the truest apotheosis of love in its most exalted form, an absolute, uncompromising willingness to surrender every last remnant of self, and succor the other's immortal spark no matter the cost to corporeal or spiritual essence? So let the vacant sockets bore into those who would pass, bearing silent judgment on the depths of ardor truly required for love to transcend. For in the infinite stretches of time's steadfast march, the whispering, eldritch breezes may yet stir, and from the eternal abyss, where profane truths lay unburied, the shriveled husks may finally yield their anguished secrets to those willing to truly listen. And so concludes the tragic tale of the star-crossed lovers of Valdaro, a chilling saga in which the all-consuming fires of desire ultimately gave tainted birth to an insatiable cosmic evil, one that forever damned the reckless souls who dared awaken it. Let this serve as a warning to those who would indulge their mortal passions without heeding the boundaries so lovingly erected by the ancients to safeguard us all. For in the spaces between realities, in those tenebrous hollows where the veil separating our plain existence from the unspeakable outer darkness grows perilously thin, the profane hungers of eternal beings slither eternally, awaiting any ecstatic transgression to slake their rapacious needs. The next time you find yourself enraptured by the throes of ardor, recall the grim fate that befell 𝘿𝙤𝙤 and 𝘿𝙤𝙤. Consider the eternal torment and spiritual subjugation they opted to embrace through their forbidden dalliance, all in a vain attempt to extinguish the eldritch abomination they themselves birthed into a mortal being. So go forth and indulge your passions, if you must, But tread carefully, lest you awaken archaic forces no mortal was ever meant to comprehend. Forces that would see this world of ours reduced to a shattered, blighted husk, much like the perpetually anguished skeletal remains discovered in that lightless, primordial sepulchre. For now, we can only speculate as to what profane truths yet slumber in the loamy earth around that gruesome discovery. What nameless, soul-withering presences that even now may be stirring from their aeon-spanning slumber, wakened by the faint echoes of the lover's agonized arias carried on the aimless, unsettling breezes. So shelter your mind well, dear listener, for in unleashing these eldritch tales upon an unsuspecting world, I fear we have already gone too far.